In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 best study techniques that are the best for people with ADHD. Hi, I'm Dr. LeGrand, and I have ADHD and dyslexia. And you might be wondering, what? You're a doctor and you have ADHD? How is that even possible? Well, I'm going to tell you that the 5 best ways that I used in college and medical school as far as study tactics that help with my ADHD brain. Because let's be honest, there's lots of different study methods and tactics that are out there that are great, but I wouldn't say they're always very catered to the ADHD brain, the ADHD mind. So let's break this down into 5 ones that I found that were really beneficial to me. The very first method that I found that was really critical for my ADHD brain is learning how to speed read, but not to learn how just to speed read, but to also search and find and having questions. So you probably know when you have to read a big fat textbook like this, it can be our ADHD brain will just wander off. Because we'll start reading something like this. Hydroxyl radical produced locally in the Fenton reaction begins the chain reaction chain. Then our brain kind of goes wander. Chain. Oh, I remember when I would swing on a chain. And also remember that one time that we were having so much fun and we would chain each other up. Our brain just starts wandering because we catch a word. And then our ADHD brain is all like, oh, this is slow and boring. Well, that is the wrong way to do it. So typically how to speed read. And if you need to look at other books, that's what I would do is I go to the library to how to speed read. Is you're using your hand and you're pretty much what you're doing is you're first really just skimming along and really catching keywords. But what this is, it's also speed reading, search and find. So what is the search and find part of it? So what I would do is I would have questions beforehand before I read the chapter. I'd be like, okay, what are some questions that maybe my teacher's going to ask, or was the subject? Sometimes I'd read the slides beforehand and then go to the chapter. So that way I had some questions and I'm looking for those answers. So now I'm prepped versus just passively reading. So I'd be really going through real fast, skimming back and forth, and you're looking for those keywords, and you eventually your brain gets trained to really pick out the most important things in the paragraph, in the entire chapter, and you start to get really good at it because you got to practice. Now, why is this important for the ADHD brain? You know, we can be very hyper focused, and people think, oh, we're slow. That's not the case. Really, it's just we have to really use these techniques because textbooks are boring, and it isn't going to entertain our ADHD brain. So how do we keep it on its toes, a little bit more entertained? You make a game out of it, and that is by searching and finding. So you're like, okay, I'm trying to search and find this question I have, and I need to find it as fast as possible. Kind of like a video game. It's like, all right, you got to find the answer as quickly as possible. And that's what you do. And that's how I kept my brain entertained all the time when I'd read these boring textbooks. The second strategy that I think that is really critical to use for study techniques for an ADHD brain is using videos. Videos are very entertaining to our ADHD brain, okay? Who doesn't like watching and being entertained by videos? And this is where YouTube is so amazing of what the resources that are out there, but you got to find someone that is entertaining, that uses lots of visuals. Khan Academy was a really blessing for me when I was going through high school, but even in college, Khan Academy had a lot of great resources that made things very visual and entertaining for me to grasp the concepts. Because let's be honest, most of our professors, most of our teachers tend to be pretty boring. Now, every once in a while, you might be lucky and have an actual entertaining teacher that can keep you engaged the entire time. But a video, usually a video production that's done, they will cut out all the fluff and get right to the nitty-gritty of what needs to be taught, but also teach it to you in a very educated way, in a very fun way to keep that ADHD brain, entertained and ready to go. Now, the third thing, and I've talked about this before, but it is so important. When you are actually reading your textbook, you're reviewing, you're going through, you need to be creating notes. Now, when I was in class, I would create these different mind maps. I would do a lot of coloring because I was pretty bored. But when I would start bringing coloring, so look at this. These are different color things that I would paint or draw out to keep me more engaged. People might think it's doodling, but really it's entertaining in the right brain, so the left brain can be more engaged in the logical side of things, but I would still draw important diagrams and color things, but also even things like this right here. It's called a mind map. So usually it's the central idea and you're branching out. This is on medications and different interactions and mechanism of actions, but who cares about that? The idea is to have that central idea, and then you're branching out and you're creating, you're drawing, you're putting the key elements in there, the key points. But on top of that, you're also drawing pictures. and this entertains the ADHD brain more. You get this, you get the gist of what's going on here. It's trying to entertain our ADHD brain, whereas the other side of our brain, the left brain, can bring things together, and therefore it's going to help you be able to retain the information but keep you engaged the entire time and keep your ADHD brain entertained. The fourth way is using mnemonics or visual cues when you're trying to memorize big, huge lists. So what I mean by talking about mnemonics, well, these have to be basically when you're trying to use something to memorize a big, long list, and this keeps it easier to memorize things but make it funny and crazy. And the ADHD brain can be really good at this. We can be very creative and think of even things that are a little too sexual or things that are a little bit too weird, but it helps us really remember it. And using mnemonics was a big thing. Another thing is using visuals. So when I was back in college, when I had to memorize a list, I would think, okay, this, especially if it was like a list in order, maybe it was a bunch of dates I had to memorize for history. I would go into my room, and the first thing I would look at is my pillow and then the blanket. And so I would think of the date on the pillow, and then there was a battle, that went on, and then went to the blanket, and then underneath the bed, and then I went to my desk. And what you're doing is you're actually putting a list of things, and when you are thinking about memorizing a list, you think in that order, but it has to be natural. It has to be what you think first pops in your head every time you go into your room or go in the kitchen. And this is a very creative way of helping with the ADHD brain to be able to, take a big list and be more engaged and keep the ADHD brain very entertained. Now, the fifth way is using flashcards. Now, I'm not just saying, oh great, everyone knows to use flashcards. Well, to keep it really entertained for the ADHD brain is not only making a group of flashcards, but we got to really use things such as like color coding, also drawing, and using different types of visuals in our flashcards. And so sometimes people just write stuff and it's just words. Well, for our ADHD brain, that is going to be boring. It's not going to be entertaining, and you need to make it into a game. And how we make this into a game is instead of just going passively through the flashcards, after you created them, made lots of different visuals, and drawn and color coded them into separate groups, then you mix them. And why you want to mix them is because what's going to happen is it will help you see patterns. And by seeing patterns, this becomes a game. So think of that as a video game trying to find patterns in diagrams and structure. And this makes it more engaged, keeps your brain more engaged into things that instead of just passively going through the flashcards, and that makes all the difference. And that made a huge difference for me for memorizing big lists when I went through college and medical school. By going through these 5 study techniques, this is what got me through college and medical school. It helped me become a doctor. You're probably asking the question is, how are you a doctor and have ADHD? How is that even possible? Well, it's these study techniques that I used and kind of adjusted and made it more my own and made it more creative for me so that it can be effective versus just learning something online where the neurotypical person typically would learn this stuff, but we got to adjust it and make it creative for myself. But guess what? I also was able to go through college and medical school without using medications. You heard me right. Without medications. Might be like, okay, that's really crazy. Do you really have ADHD? Well, if you want to know how I was able to go through college and medical school and still today treat my ADHD without medications, watch this video right here, and I will see you in the inside.